Federal government secures leave to appeal $9.6 billion in favor of P&ID Limited. Anchor Borrower Scheme, 1.13 million jobs created along the various agricultural value chain, says the CBN. Plus quick Saudi response key to curbing volatility. Details of these and more in this edition of Business Express. I am Leah Babatunde. Now, the federal government of Nigeria has secured a leave to appeal against the award and a stay of enforcement of the UK Commercial Court judgment in favor of Process and Industrial Development Limited to seize $9.6 billion Nigeria's assets. Anthony Forson reports.
The original decision on August 16 converted an arbitration award held by P&ID to a legal judgment permitting the British Virgin Island-based firm to seize Nigeria's international assets.
The other application was an application filed at the instance of Nigeria seeking the stay of execution. We are studying the ruling from that perspective, from the perspectives of compliance, from the perspectives of the law, from the perspectives of available remedies to us.
For Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed, the ruling will allow the truth to be unveiled.
What this means is that we can no longer be harassed by P&ID. At least in the next 60 days when we would have been able to meet the cost condition. Two, it means that we now have a fresh opportunity of arguing our case. And also even the opportunity of filing, separate, suits to have the entire, award set aside.
The federal government has strongly viewed with serious concerns the underhanded manner by which the negotiation, signing and formation of the contract was carried out by people it described as having vested interest in the past administration, which believes was in connivance with their local and international conspirators.
The Nigerian government wants the world to reiterate commitment towards achieving the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs. This was part of the submissions of President Muhammadu Buhari at World Leaders Meeting underway at the United Nations headquarters in New York. In this report, Olusheye Adiago finds out the state of SDGs in Nigeria and the global import of the summit.
Sarah Sunday has been into the selling of groundnuts since last year. She told me that her proceed is basically to fend for herself and take care of her academic needs. So, Sarah, what do you know about the Sustainable Development Goals?
I've never heard anything about SDG.
17 goals of transforming the world it is through mobilizing efforts to end all forms of poverty, fight inequalities, and tackle climate change, with focus at first reaching the needs of people at the grassroots. Adopted in September 2015 by world leaders at the United Nations Summit and came into force on 1st January 2016. Participating countries were required to domesticate plans based on their means and requirements. 4 years running, the reviews of its outcomes and sharing of experiences were part of the cross of discourse at the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, USA. The meeting, which is the fourth UN summit on SDGs since 2015, is coming with a political declaration titled Gearing Up for a Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development in 2030. For Nigeria, the establishment of a National Social Investment Program, NSIP, has since been addressing the need of the poor and vulnerable members of the Nigerian population. And now is the commencement of Integrated Sustainable Development Goals, ISDGs model, recently launched by President Muhammadu Buhari in New York.
As a government, we have since recognized that to achieve the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, we must scientifically understand our implementation context, carefully formulate policies and programs, and judiciously apply human and financial resources. This cannot be achieved with ad hoc planning.
The federal government says Nigeria will reap bountifully from the recently signed African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AfCFTA, as it is bound to grow the economy and provide millions of jobs for citizens. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo reiterated that the AfCFTA remains a laudable initiative that builds on existing regional initiatives and presents opportunities for increased collaboration and economic integration among African economies. In a message to the Conference of Directors in Abuja, the Vice President expressed optimism that it will promote a vibrant and competitive industrial sector that is central to job creation and income growth. And the federal government says it is poised to sustaining a robust engagement for the development of the power sector. And Joshua Ojito reports.
This is what most business owners like you say they pass through in search of adequate power supply to run their businesses in spite of the privatization of the sector.
If they buy fuel, something like that, I go only something at 40,000 for this year in months.
The problem we are having with NEPA now is their bill is too much.
It is to address these and many other challenges power sector operators in generation and distribution companies meeting at one of Nigeria's flagship dam infrastructure say the theme next level for the Nigerian power sector, unlocking real liquidity, is appropriate. The Minister of Power says federal government has approved the third round of intervention funding for the sector with a total of 1.5 trillion naira in the last 2 years. The minister tasked participants to deliver affordable and adequate power supply to Nigerians.
We will do our utmost best to establish the appropriate policies to address the issues such as collection of receivable, which has real implication for the generation and distribution companies, and the establishment of the cost reflection tariff for the sector.
As more power is made available to industries in particular, more jobs will be created, more Nigerians will be empowered. So the issue of tariff will not even arise at all, because people will be capable of paying the cost reflective tariff.
With the outcome of this meeting, Aliyu and many others are hopeful of improved power supply in the country.
Renewable energy, we hear, will displace petroleum as the most used global energy source by 2050. The United States Energy Information Administration, EIA, in its latest long-term international outlook predicts that renewables, including wind, solar, and hydroelectric, will become the largest source of energy by 2050, surpassing oil. Since energy production accounts for more than 70% of emissions, the forecast sees global renewable energy demand increasing by 3% annually between 2018 and 2040. Now to discuss renewable energy, its investment potential as well as climate change is a renewable expert. Dr. Nkiruka Madwekwe, you're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay. So, We hear there's a growing revolution moving energy sources from the fossils we know in a way to curb carbon emissions and to save the planet climate change. Where is Nigeria in the whole of this scheme?
That's a very interesting question, and it's quite relevant to our time. Most especially taking consideration of our president, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari's address at the United Nations, his recent address, where he let the nations know that in addition to having signed the Paris Agreement, Nigeria stands resolutely with other countries in trying to curb the carbon emission targets, in trying to meet those targets. And so having signed the agreement, we've also done our national determined contribution. We've set it out. We have a climate change policy. We have a renewable energy policy. And part of the benefits that has arisen from this, or that has, is that in like the president highlighted, is that we have increased our forest cover to 6.7%. So you see what Nigeria is doing a lot, because you have to grow the trees to. Growing of trees is part of the ways to handle the climate change impacts of global warming. And something important that the president said is that Nigeria has issued 2 sovereign green bonds. Now, why is it important? The green bonds provides finances for environmentally friendly projects, and these projects include renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects. So you can see Nigeria is already on the move to meet those targets. And this ties in with Nigeria meeting her Agenda 2063 goals, African Union Agenda 2063 goals of renewable energy. So to meet up with, so any project that's going to come under that green bond that Nigeria has issued has to move towards the target of producing 13,000 megawatts of solar energy. So you can see what Nigeria is doing.
Okay, so in meeting this Agenda 2063, how viable is this renewable energy to Africa, and do you see it as a panacea to the energy crisis on the continent, in particular Nigeria?
To develop, you need energy, you need power, you need electricity, and Agenda 2063 has highlighted renewable energy as one of its priority areas, and that falls under Aspiration 1. So yes, renewable energy is one of the solutions to Africa's development. That's what I would say.
Okay, so the use of technology around renewable energy, how expensive is that?
Okay. The operational cost is not that expensive, but the technology is, and that's where we need government's backing, government's input. That's where we need incentives. We need if you look at the Western countries that have progressed towards increasing renewable energy, meeting up to 25% of renewable energy sources in their energy mix, you find that they've had government backing, they've had incentives, they've had tax tariffs, they've also had subsidies. And then you find that government encourages you where you want to perhaps have a solar panel in your house. So if we had all those things, that would help ameliorate the expensive technology, and so it also help research and development as well, which is what we need, and to also help the local manufacturing in Nigeria, which in its own way would reduce the cost of renewable energy in Nigeria.
So I'm going to take you back a bit. You said Nigeria has her climate change policy and renewable policy, but I think this is news to a lot of Nigerians out there.
Okay.
What is the target of these policies?
So the renewable energy policy is the government's government's wish, the government's directive towards increasing renewable energy sources in our energy mix. And we're hoping that by, I think, hoping I'll get it right, but by 2050, we would have increased to 35% of renewable energy sources in our energy mix. So we're also hoping that solar energy will be the second primary source of energy, compared to currently what we have is from fossil fuel. We have installed capacity of 10,000 megawatts. Installed capacity for hydropower, we have 2,000 megawatts. Now I'm being very conservative here, but we're hoping that with the policy that solar energy will be the second energy source.
Okay, so studies have really shown that renewable energy sources are available. Yes, Nigeria is quite hot at the moment. So why are we not tapping into these sources? Why are we not tapping into them?
You said something very significant, which is that a lot of people are unaware about the government's policy on renewable energy, the government's policy on climate change. So yes, there's a need to create that awareness. I would say that that's where National Orientation Agency comes in. That's what they need to do, to help orientate Nigerians about what we have. And NTA is doing a fantastic job by having this conversation now. Also, there's and I would say a number of people are not optimistic that technology would work in Nigeria. So perhaps that is another one. And then very, very important, I touched earlier on how other governments that have been able to make renewable energy substantial in their country, what the government has done. We have a policy, but we don't have a law. And so if I bring in, let's say, solar panels, I pay tariff on them. But the policy says zero tariff. The policy says 5%, 5 years holiday tax, right? But because there's no law in place, it's harder for Nigerians and expensive for Nigerians to go into renewable, to go into solar energy.
So it means we need to get some form of collaboration with the National Assembly. That's what it means.
Yes.
So do you see that in the near future that fossil fuel will be overtaken by renewables?
Well, going by the predictions, perhaps for the developed countries. Yes. So that means for Nigeria, perhaps we may not be able to export like we used to, but we will need it to develop. So that is why we need to have more domestic refineries to help our development. So there's going to be an increase in renewable energy in the energy mix of other countries and African countries, but I really don't see that phasing out in Africa in general and specifically in Nigeria. But however, it's a good thing we're having this conversation now so that we can put our gears in place to make sure that we're at par with our counterparts.
Okay, so lastly, how do you see Nigeria getting a favorable energy mix, let's say by the year 2050, where we're expected to be the third most populous nation?
Again, there's a need for the legal framework. We have a policy, but we need a legal framework. Look at Ghana. Ghana has a renewable energy law, and that's one of the reasons why she has made as much progress that she has in renewable energy. So we need that law, and I'm calling on the National Assembly, this current National Assembly, to please push that law, to please push the bill for renewable energy. That is the only way I think we will be able to get to where we need to be by 2030, 2050, 2063.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nkiru, for coming on the program. And I'm hoping we're going to have you some other time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So moving on, the dollar stood tall on Friday, holding near multi-week highs against most major currencies as heightened risk from political tensions to the Sino-US trade war increased its safe haven luster. Now, let's see how the Naira is exchanging with other international currencies.